Hey everyone, it's Hamish from the Young Investors Podcast. Myself and Brandon are excited to bring you your weekly rundown of the latest business and investing news from around the world. A quick reminder before we get started, any advice provided by Brandon is general and does not consider your financial situation, needs, or objectives, so consider whether it's appropriate for you. Brandon Kolk is authorized to provide general financial product advice in Australia and is authorized representative number 1305795 of Guideway Financial Services Proprietary Limited, AFSL number 420367. Please see the description box for Brandon's financial services guide. Past performance is not a reliable indication of future investment returns. But with that said, let's get into another episode of the Young Investors Podcast.
All right, guys, welcome back. Hamish, what's going on, my friend?
What's going on? Not a lot. I've been kind of... I feel bad kind of saying this because I know you're really busy at the moment, but I've been taking a bit of an easy week this week. I had my kind of three or four really busy weeks trying to prepare and trying to take a couple of weeks off for the end of the year. So I've been enjoying catching up on some sleep.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Which has been good. But I feel bad saying that because I know you are incredibly busy at the moment.
Oh, no, that's okay. No, definitely. You've... It's true, I am busy, but it doesn't mean you should feel bad about having a couple of weeks off. It just means you've got your ducks in a row quicker than I have. But yeah, one of our guys is on leave. That's the only reason that I'm stressing.
Yeah.
It's because now I'm kind of having to cover the shortfall a little bit.
Yeah.
But no, we're doing all right. We just have to work really hard towards the end of the year. And it's always the way. Like, I wish why can't like July be the big sponsor month? Why does it have to be December? Why does it have to be December?
Yeah, well, it is just kind of funny, right? Because it's obviously the biggest month for the advertising market. And one of the big reasons is because everybody is going on holiday and that sort of thing. So it's just kind of like an unfortunate reality, which is when everyone else is taking a break and starting to spend and go on holidays. For people who are selling advertising, it's the busiest time of the year. It's kind of like the opposite to what we would want. So it just is what it is. Yeah.
It's quite funny. But anyway, we only got a few more episodes of the year. We'll have to talk after we get off air as to what we're doing over Christmas in terms of the podcast. We might have to schedule up an episode or two. Maybe do a Q&A podcast or something like that, like we have done previously. We'll have to have a chat about that.
Yeah, we'll have to do our predictions. We'll have to look at our predictions, our review. So, which we always do at the start of the year. The first episode of the year, I believe we always do our predictions, first or second episode, and then second last or last episode we'll go through and see how we did. And I'm actually not sure. As always, I have no idea what I predicted.
I can't remember.
I can think of a couple that I know I got right, just because they were big kind of events that happened throughout the year, but in terms of like what I said the market would do and those sorts of things, which we'll cover, I have no idea. I actually cannot remember the slightest.
Yeah, I can't remember.
Like, what did I say about...
I think I've got it saved.
Yeah, like what did I say about Bitcoin? Like, Bitcoin's up like, 200% this year or something insane. I have no idea what I said about it. No idea.
I've got it saved in a Google Doc somewhere, so I'll just have to dig that up. But yeah, maybe we'll do that. But anyway... that's for next week or maybe the week after. I don't even know what date it is today. But with that said, Hamish, what are we talking about today? I'm going to talk about what the heck is going on with this assassination of the United Healthcare CEO.
Yes.
Because things just keep coming out because it's crazy. And it's wild, the social media response to that story as well, which I'll talk about. And apart from that, I've only got two very quick stories actually today. We'll talk about Tesla stock because that is just, oh my gosh, it's going bananas. And also a little bit about the budget deficit as well. What have you got today?
Yeah, I'm going to talk through the November update for US inflation, which is, again, just a pretty quick story, and also an update about the Fed meeting, which is happening next week, their final rate decision for the year. And I'm also going to talk through General Motors, and they're giving up on their autonomous taxi fleet. Which, yes, they did have one. I wasn't. That's not a good sign when you don't really know that they were operating one of those. But yeah, I'll talk through everything that's going on in regards to that.
All right, let's do it, dude.
Yeah, With that said, today's episode is brought to you by Seeking Alpha, your one-stop shop for stock analysis, market data, and news. Access expert analysis and news for thousands of stocks. View buy, hold, and sell ratings from members, Wall Street analysts, and Seeking Alpha's own algorithm. Screen for stocks using a variety of fundamental and technical analysis metrics. Access 10 years of financial data and company filings, and manage your portfolio by tracking your investments with price alerts, so you never miss a buying opportunity again. Click the link in the episode description or head directly to seekingalpha.me/young investors to try Seeking Alpha free for 7 days. Do you want to start off with this United Health CEO story? Because this is by far the biggest thing that's happened. I guess it's kind of business related, but just generally speaking, in the last week or so.
Yeah, it's huge. The United Healthcare CEO was assassinated. He was murdered, which was kind of crazy. And there's been a lot of kind of updates over the last few days, and there might be a day before this gets published. So maybe we even have more information by the time this goes out. But running with the most current information as to what we've got right now, and it says here, Luigi Mangione, who has been charged with killing the chief executive of United Healthcare outside a company investors' day in Manhattan, was arrested with a notebook that detailed plans for the shooting, according to two law enforcement officials. So the notebook described going to a conference and killing an executive, the officials said. It said, quote, "What do? You whack the CEO at the annual parasitic bean counter convention. It's targeted, precise, and doesn't risk innocence," was one passage written in the notebook, the officials said. The shooting of the executive, Brian Thompson, occurred early December 4th. I actually think this happened in the hours after we recorded last week's episode.
Yeah, right.
If I'm not mistaken. I think it was that same day.
Wow.
But it just hadn't happened yet. But yeah, it occurred on December 4th as Mr. Thompson arrived on West 54th Street outside a Hilton hotel to prepare for the United Healthcare investors meeting. His assailant escaped on a bicycle and then disappeared. Police officials in New York were able to match Mr. Mangione's fingerprints to those on a water bottle and a Kind snack bar wrapper recovered near the crime scene, Commissioner Jessica Tisch said at a news conference on Wednesday. Commissioner Tisch said the New York police have now have the unregistered gun that was found in Mr. Mangione's possession when he was arrested in Altoona, Pennsylvania on Monday. The police brought it to the department's crime lab, where they matched it to the 3 shell casings that were found at the crime scene, she said. The crime lab confirmed they matched the suspects, police officials said in a briefing with reporters on Wednesday afternoon. Mangione, 26, was captured Monday after a tip from an employee at a McDonald's in Altoona who was alerted by a customer who recognized him. He has been denied bail on a murder charge and is fighting extradition to New York, a process that could take weeks. How crazy is this story, Hamish?
Yeah, it's kind of insane. I mean, I saw the kind of the CCTV footage of it happening, and it's such a bizarre thing to see happen. And it always kind of shocks me that people actually, this person at McDonald's identified them. That part always shocks me, because I don't know if I've ever taken notice of anybody in public, like to the point where, sure, I probably read news articles of, this person's on the run and so, but to like match that face to someone you see in person, I never understand how that even happens. But I guess it's just like a law of large numbers kind of thing. Like, there's going to be someone.
I always used to think, when we had those shows on TV, which was like Missing Persons Unit and stuff like that, I always used to think to myself, man, I could stare at these pictures of this person for 10 years and then they could just walk straight past me and I would not be able to match the face to the person walking past me.
Yeah.
And it's so easy as well to like make yourself look different, like wear a hat, wear sunglasses, shave your head, just do anything. I mean, if you worst came to worst, you could like put a scar on your face and I'd be like, is that the same person? I don't know, it doesn't look like it. So the fact that they can be identified, but I guess it's right, you're right, it's what they probably had 100 calls that somebody matched the description and then one of them turned out to be true or something like that. But it's kind of crazy that happens, hey?
Yeah, it's insane. Yeah, crazy.
Yeah, it says here, the quote from his lawyer, quote, "He's contesting it." I just thought that was so funny, for reasons that I'll talk about in a second. So he's contesting it. His lawyer, Thomas Dickey, said on Tuesday. Mr. Dickey did not immediately respond to Cress's comment. When Mr. Mangione was arrested, he had the so-called ghost gun, a suppressor, and false identification cards similar to those believed to have been used by the killer, officials said. He also had identification bearing his real name. He also had a 262-word handwritten note, which begins by appearing to take responsibility for the murder. The note, which officials described as a manifesto, also mentioned the existence of a notebook. The recovery of the notebook was first reported by CNN. Yeah.
I think, yeah.
So
it's as bad as
he's contesting it, Hamish. He's contesting it.
Yeah. Sounds like he might have done it.
Yeah, it's interesting. Benjamin Braffman, a prominent defense lawyer in New York whose clients have included Diddy and also Harvey Weinstein, said Wednesday that the police had amassed an overwhelming amount of evidence that left little room for Mr. Mangione to mount a viable defense at trial. Quote, "This was a rather brazen act of violence," Mr. Braffman said, quote, "given that there doesn't seem to be an inch of Manhattan that isn't covered in video recording devices. It's hard to explain away what happened."
Yeah.
But this kind of leads me into the thing that I find interesting about this case. It says here, still, he said, "that did not mean that prosecutors' job would be easy. They will have a hard time finding jurors who do not feel like they've been treated unfairly by the healthcare industry." Quote, "I think most people, when questioned about that issue, will say, yeah, I dealt with the healthcare industry that I was unhappy with," he said. Quote, "but they didn't go out and execute the head of an insurance company." And this is what I find interesting about this case in particular, is the response on social media. So you've got some guy that's gone up and literally assassinated, just shot him in the back, bang, 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 the CEO of United Healthcare. And the social media response has been overwhelmingly positive for the killer.
Yeah.
I think someone walks up behind Buffett and pops Buffett, I don't think you get the same response. So it's been very interesting to see on social media how people are starting to call this guy a hero, like it's going to start a revolution. Like, it's just so bizarre. And I guess I don't agree with it. Obviously, I don't think anybody should be murdered. I don't think we should treat murder as a good thing. But it kind of shows how poorly a lot of Americans see, or how corrupt a lot of Americans see their healthcare system, for this kind of thing to be like, by some applauded.
Yeah. It's really bizarre because it's hard to tell, I think, online how much of what you're seeing is just people just like joking, making troll stuff. And yeah, sure, you can make the argument you shouldn't even joke about this stuff. But it does seem like, yeah, there is it does seem like the consensus when you read comments online is that this event, this assassination was like a good thing. Like that seems to be like the consensus that at least I've seen. And I've read like a lot of different stuff on like a lot of, comments on YouTube, on Instagram, all kinds of places. And it does seem like maybe it's not a consensus or a majority, but at least there's a very large percentage of people who think that this is actually a good thing. Like this CEO was like a bad person, and like he deserved this. And that to me is extremely bizarre because, I don't know. It's just to me that's insane. Like I would like to think that most people, at least at a fundamental level, understand that we shouldn't be having people like taking the law into their own hands like this. Like we're talking about a CEO, and you might say that what the company does is really bad for a lot of people. But it's not like this person is like committing any crimes. Like what you're really mad about is like the laws or the regulations, behind the healthcare system that allow these companies to deny claims to people who who are making legitimate claims, let's say. But you're not really mad. Like it's bizarre to see people. It's bizarre to see people celebrate the death of someone doing their job. You might disagree morally with what they do, but does that mean we should still have people taking the law into their own hands? I just think it's such a bizarre thing. But it is also hard to tell how many people are actually serious about that point of view online, because a lot of people are just kind of, it's like
keyboard warriors.
Yeah, it's like an easy win. It's like sometimes there's like a thing where it's like, you can make a comment and most people will agree with you online. And so it's just like an easy win. So there's probably a lot of that just happening as well.
Yeah. It says here, the suspect saw the killing as a, quote, symbolic takedown, according to a New York Police Department internal report that detailed parts of the 3-page document. He, quote, likely views himself as a hero of sorts who finally decided to act upon such injustices, the report said. The police officials in New York City, already concerned that the shooting might inspire other violence, have noted that numerous mock, quote, wanted posters with images of high-profile corporate executives have been posted along Manhattan sidewalks. A video on social media showed 3 flyers with images of top executives. One of the flyers featured Mr. Thompson's face with an X over it. The police department included some of the images in its internal report, which warned that people on social media were celebrating the shooting and encouraging more killings of executives. The report mentioned, quote, an elevated threat facing executives in the near term, and said there was a, quote, risk that a wide range of extremists may view Mangione as a martyr and an example to follow. Just hours after Mr. Mangione was arrested on Monday at the McDonald's, a young woman was standing outside holding a sign that said, quote, corrupt insurance CEOs have got to go. Okay. And after all that, the stock fell 12.5%, Hamish.
Whoa. Yeah, gee.
So there you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. It's a hard one because I'm sure that the healthcare system in America, it seems quite corrupt. I've never looked into it.
Oh,
but it wouldn't surprise me if it's quite corrupt.
Yeah.
I see. I can't remember. I think it was United Healthcare. I saw an Atrioc video, and he was talking about the amount of healthcare claims that don't get, like, what percentage of healthcare claims don't get paid out.
Yep.
And I think United was like right at the top by a landslide.
Yeah. So like the industry average was, I think it was 15 or 16% of claims denied, and United was either 33 or 37% denied
Something
claims.
Like
and it had kind of accelerated to that point over the last few years. So even just a few years back, they were closer to the average. So it seems like the increase in denied claims is kind of an intentional policy shift, like an intentional direction that the company has taken, not something that's just kind of naturally happened because you have more people filing claims that should be denied. Because obviously within that percentage, there are claims that should be denied, and there's claims that shouldn't be denied, that they're just denying because they know that most people are not going to follow them up in court, and even if they do, they'll probably lose. And so there's like a mix in there. But yeah, I did see that too. But it's baffling to me that people, it seems like a lot of people can't have, like online, it seems like people don't think you can have the view that like the industry is corrupt and should be investigated, but also we shouldn't have a random dude just killing CEOs. like it seems like, I don't know. It's bizarre reading the comments online about all of this. Like all of these people are saying, yeah, but look at the denied claims rates. And it's like, yeah, but does that mean he should just be assassinated? Like, I don't think that really is right. But
no, I don't think it's right either. And even if you come from that point of view, like, isn't death the easy way out?
True.
Don't you want? Isn't that the idea of like the detention, like prison system, is that people have to, suffer for their, live in prison and have to, death is the easy way out. It's like when people don't want to face the consequences, they normally just kill themselves, right?
True. Yeah.
But anyway, that's going down a more morbid topic of conversation that I don't particularly want to go down. But yes, there you go, Hamish. That is the biggest, by far the biggest news story in business for the week. But that is all we've got. That is the most current information as of recording. Tell me about General Motors. Can we move on to General Motors? Because I am interested, because I have not seen this. I'm very interested in this autonomous driver technology, but I've not seen what's going on here. So please enlighten me.
So General Motors said on Tuesday that it would stop developing a taxi that can drive itself. It's an autonomous taxi fleet, ending a years-long project, which, as I said in the intro, I was like, oh, they're shutting it down. And then the second thought I had was, wait, they had an autonomous taxi program. I think I had heard of this kind of very briefly, probably at some point. But it certainly hasn't had the attention, or I guess probably you could say the success of some of the other kind of autonomous taxi ventures or business ventures. So, of course, you've got Tesla with, the autonomous driving features in their cars, and they're, planning on developing this kind of robo-taxi network. They unveiled, what did they call the taxi that they kind of did at that robo event?
The Cybercab?
Yeah, that's what it was. Yeah.
I think
it was. Yeah, Cyber. Yeah. It was Cybercab. Yeah.
I like their Robo-van and how Elon calls it Robovan. I love that. That's funny.
Yeah, that's great.
The Robovan.
Yeah. And so Tesla's obviously, deep into this field. You've got Waymo, which is owned by Google's parent Alphabet. They offer autonomous taxis in San Francisco, Los Angeles, Phoenix, and they also are planning on extending to Atlanta, Miami, and Austin, Texas. So they've got a number of programs in major cities, and they've been expanding it. So clearly they've had some success, or at least they see the value in continuing to invest in this kind of business venture. And then you've even got companies like Amazon, which are planning on launching a similar service in the near future. So it's an area that a lot of kind of, I guess, tech-related companies are interested in, and we'll talk about Microsoft in this story as well. And then, of course, it's something that automotive companies are interested in as well, as it could be a meaningful change to their business. So GM, General Motors, spent $10 billion trying to build the technology for a robo-taxi business under a subsidiary called Cruise. They operated a self-driving fleet in San Francisco, similar to Waymo, but clearly on a kind of a much smaller scale. So they spent $10 billion building this technology, wild, and they're out. So they've essentially gotten not too much out of this business venture. Mary Barra, the chief executive of GM, suggested that the payoff was too far in the future to justify the expense of developing the technology. She said, quote, "You have to understand the cost of running a robo-taxi fleet, which is not our core business and is very expensive." And very expensive it is indeed. The decision to end Cruise will save GM about $1 billion a year.
I mean, I can understand that, but it's pretty funny that this always just brings me back to that stupid Joe Biden speech where he stood up and he was like, I want to really thank Mary Barra. She is leading the revolution to the EVs, and she's just absolutely crushing it. I mean it, Mary. I mean it. You are leading the charge. It's like Elon's over here being like, hey. He's like, no, she's the number one person leading the charge to EVs. But I mean, what can you say? I think it's Waymo and Tesla. I think that's it. I mean, honestly, I think it's just Tesla long term. I am a Tesla bull. I think they're going to figure it out. It might take a long time, but I think they will do it. Waymo's going to cap themselves out because they rely on the
LiDAR?
LiDAR, yes, thank you, Hamish. LiDAR and street mapping. So it's going to be really good, probably really good eventually in cities, but if it won't work outside of cities, I don't think. So it's very interesting, but $10 billion invested. That's it's pretty rough to pull the plug. But to be honest, I'm also not surprised.
No. It is kind of funny because it does speak to kind of what happens when something is kind of disrupting an industry. You'll often see kind of the legacy businesses like make an attempt. But then there's always this maybe their business is kind of stalling, and now they've got this big, expensive, moonshot investment that they're burning tons of money on, and it's always going to be a difficult decision for the executive to decide whether do they keep throwing $1 billion a year at this business, or do we just stop? And now we've got $1 billion that we could do share repurchases or pay a dividend, and that's going to be much better for the stock price in the short term. And that's always the challenging decision that happens with big disruptions in the industry. And it's why usually there's a new company. In a lot of cases, a new company will come along and kind of take the lead away from the legacy businesses. And so that's what they said. They lost $10 billion. They were losing $1 billion a year. There was one small piece that I noticed the CEO left out of this statement, which was the reason why they actually stopped running the fleet in San Francisco. So last year, they actually suspended the fleet because one of its cars hit and dragged a pedestrian, causing several injuries. Ooh. So it wasn't that it was just burning a bunch of money, but it also wasn't really working. And I mean, I guess, to be fair, you would expect there to be accidents just like there are accidents with normal vehicles. But yeah, that's always going to be a tough sell when you have kind of computer running a vehicle or running something and then it hurts somebody or kills somebody. It's that's always going to be tough to swallow.
That is the hard thing because the media just gets on top of it and just kills the idea. And that's something that Tesla's had to also work really hard for. Like, there are so many people that will state the number of, oh, look, this car was on autopilot and it had an accident or something like that. And they always report the accidents or the battery caught on fire or something, but they never report the statistics of, miles driven per accident in an autopilot when someone's on autopilot versus not. And if you actually look at that, someone driving on autopilot is far, far less likely to crash than someone just driving. It's like night and day. Yeah. But that's not what the media reports.
That's not a headline.
Exactly.
That headline
but
sucks.
It's also like human psychology. It's interesting. People saying, "Oh yeah, but it killed it." It's like, yeah, but we can't talk to the people that their life was saved by autopilot because they don't know that their life was saved by autopilot. So there are people out there that would have died if they were driving, but because they weren't driving, they survived. But they don't know that.
True.
So you can't talk to those people.
Yeah, that's actually an interesting point.
It skews the reaction, I suppose.
Yeah. It's a problem. I think that it's a media problem that's just going to face these kinds of businesses.
Definitely
for the foreseeable future. So that they've kind of folded, they've kind of got rid of this cruise autonomous business, but they're not completely out of kind of the autonomous driving business per se. So they're going to be folding the remainder of the cruise business into their main business, and they will continue to develop technologies that assist humans in driving. So things that have now been pretty common features in vehicles for quite a few years now. Things like steering, braking, and accelerating without human intervention in certain circumstances. Kind of like following a car, keeping a following distance and keeping in the lane and that sort of thing. So that's the direction that GM will be continuing to focus. And GM isn't the only loser from this particular venture. Microsoft will be taking an $800 million hit in their financials next quarter on their minority investment in Cruise. So Microsoft joined a number of other companies, including Honda, in investing a total of $2 billion into this kind of autonomous this autonomous vehicle business. At the time, they actually gave Cruise a valuation of $30 billion. So There you go. That's another crazy valuation for a business that has ultimately turned out to be nothing.
Yep.
So Microsoft bet on the wrong horse there, Microsoft, but they gave it
another
a go.
one bites the dust.
Yep. Exactly.
There you go, Hamish.
Yeah.
Well, is that all we've got to talk about for GM?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Well, this is a very, very quick story that I just thought I would chuck in. It's literally just talking about a stock price, so we don't have to talk about it for very long. But I thought I would just chuck it in anyway, because Tesla, kind of talking about a GM competitor, an autonomous competitor, their stock is going quite the other way. Their stock is now up 69%. That was the headline. I thought it was so funny, the headline. It's classic. Tesla hits new all-time high, up 69% post-election.
That's insane. Yeah. Well, that's literally a month. It's a month. It's 5 weeks.
Yeah. Oh, actually, I might have gotten that wrong. It might have been 69% for the year and less post-election. That's probably what it was.
Yeah. Okay.
Sorry.
Maybe.
Sorry, I might have written that down incorrectly. But the stock rose to a closing high of $424.77 per share, which is about $15 above its previous peak of $409 on November 4th, 2021. So
wow,
it's crazy. That was like the peak of the speculation, right?
Yeah.
Where everything was just super, super speculative. And then the stock came back down to reality, right? People actually started noticing that it wasn't this explosive growth story anymore. They were kind of just, they were building, but they were building like a car manufacturer can build, like just pretty slow and stable.
Yeah.
And then of course the stock really cratered, and now we're right back to that speculative kind of all-time high. I was looking at the PE ratio just before, and it said 116 at the moment, which is nuts.
That doesn't seem healthy, but
yeah, exactly. Yeah. Tesla's market value has swelled by now about 71% this year, with almost all of those gains coming since Donald Trump's election victory last month. The stock's 38% rally in November marked its best monthly performance since January 2023 and its 10th best on record. Tesla's surge to a record marks a dramatic turn from its performance to the start of the year. The company's shares plunged 29% in the first 3 months of 2024, the worst quarter for the stock since the end of 2022, and the third worst since Tesla went public in 2010. At the time, investors were concerned about Tesla's core business, which reported declining revenue in the first quarter, in part due to increased competition from China. In its third quarter earnings report in October, Tesla reported a year-over-year revenue increase of 8%, which fell just shy of estimates. So it's nothing crazy, right? It does say here, however, the company reported better than expected profit, and Musk said on the earnings call that his best guess is that vehicle growth will reach 20% to 30% next year due to lower cost vehicles and the advent of autonomy. So this is just, I don't have too much to say about this, but I just wanted to highlight, if you haven't seen Tesla's stock price, the speculation is back. It's back to all-time highs, I think, around Tesla stock. Yeah,
it's another one of those examples where in just the space of a couple of years, there's been an enormous shift from extreme optimism to extreme pessimism back to extreme optimism. There's been quite a few of them in the kind of the techie kind of space over the last couple of years, especially around, interest rate rises, which happened throughout 2022, I believe. And, particularly for companies like Tesla that are kind of large discretionary purchases, a lot of people buy them on finance. There was kind of this expectation that there would be a massive slowdown in demand and that it would hit their business and that they would face many of the challenges that, automakers generally face in a rising interest rate environment. And more recently, that's kind of switched. We've got, interest rates coming down and some of the problems that Tesla was facing with competition and that sort of thing, at least for now, seem like they were kind of overblown. So it is kind of interesting just to see when you see it in its extremes, investors kind of flooding towards and away and towards businesses based on these kind of mostly short-term factors that probably have little to do with where they're going over the next decade or so.
Also, I confused myself, Hamish, before. I said that I potentially wrote down the headline wrong, but I was correct.
Wow, yeah, that's crazy. Well, that is insane because up 69% post-election, but 71%
And 71% for the year.
So they were basically flat for the year, and then post-election it's really all come in. So yeah, that is insane. Markets are absolutely on fire at the moment. That is a safe statement to make.
The Trump effect is real.
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty crazy.
Well, this is something potentially related to what Donald Trump is going to implement in terms of policies. Inflation.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, certainly.
What's going on?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, yeah, it would be ridiculous to say that the low inflation and the interest rate cuts over the last few months have in the last year or so have certainly played a role. In why markets are so positive. And yeah, we did get the latest inflation data out of the US for the month of November. So for the year to the end of November, consumer price index rose just 2.7%. In the month of November specifically, it rose 0.3%, which was slightly faster than the previous few months. The last 4 or so months, the inflation rate has been about 0.2% every month, and November was 0.3%, so slightly faster, but still a pretty slow pace. The annual CPI rate of 2.7% increased in pace for the second month in a row, but is still very is still quite a low rate. Australia's generally agreed target is 2 to 3%. I think the US target's 2%, so they're a little bit more conservative with their inflation target. But nevertheless, it's certainly a lot nicer than the 9.1% that it reached just a couple of years ago. Core CPI was a little bit hotter, coming in at 3.3% for the year, about the same level that it's been at for the past 5 months. So core CPI is just outside the healthy range, and it's kind of been very sticky at that level. In terms of a monthly rate, core CPI was also up 0.3%, about the same pace that it's been kind of following for the last few months. And so, inflation. The inflation story has been it's pretty good, but it's just outside of what. It's just
a little. It's just keeping us on the edge of our seat, isn't it, Hamish?
Exactly right. In terms of the biggest kind of categories in what's driving and detracting from inflation, used cars and trucks was the biggest category for the month, up 2% in the month. Gasoline and fuel oil was up 0.6% for the month each. Utility gas was up 1%. And the only significant deflation category, the only significant detractor, was electricity, which was minus 0.4% for the month. So those were kind of the major movers, but there wasn't anything really outstanding in the...
Nothing crazy.
No. In terms of shelter was up 0.3% for the month, and shelter being about a third of the overall CPI basket, because people spend a lot of their money on shelter. That obviously continues to be a big driver, people increasing, or landlords increasing their rents and that sort of thing. But there wasn't anything too surprising. And of course, this report comes just ahead of next week's Fed meetings. The last interest rate decision of 2024 will be next week, and the market strongly expects a 0.25% rate cut. In fact, after this inflation report, traders now have the odds of a rate cut at 99%, according to CME Group's Fed Watch measure. So the markets basically think it's a certainty that there will be a rate cut next week. So there you go.
Would that mean that that would mean that there'd be 3 rate cuts in 2024? Which I think, coincidentally, isn't that exactly what the Fed guided, at the start of the year? I can't remember. I have a feeling they said 3 rate cuts in 2024 or something like that. Am I wrong? I can't remember.
I think I can't remember off the top of my head. I'd have to look. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I can't remember.
It's pretty.
I just have this
it's pretty
feeling
close.
in my brain.
It's pretty close to what they expected, I think. Yeah.
But anyway,
I'm not sure.
I was just thinking, have they somehow got it right for once? Like, they're so commonly wrong. It's like, have they actually done it?
Yeah.
But anyway,
yeah,
we'll see.
Yeah, we'll definitely have a look at that either next week or the week after when we look at our predictions, because we'll take a look at what
I feel like
we predicted, and then we'll also have a look at what the Fed was kind of saying at the start of the year, because that is always interesting to look at. Sometimes they're right, a lot of the time sometimes they're way off, and it's hilarious. Like that time they thought there would be 2% inflation and there was 9 or something like that.
Yeah, transitory.
Yeah, exactly. And so we'll have all the numbers for that when we do our predictions. Our predictions episode.
Funny,
yeah.
Oh dear. Yeah, we'll see. I guess it looks like it's close to a certainty in the market's view.
Yeah.
That we'll get this rate cut.
Yep.
All right. I just quickly want to. This is a very quick article as well that I just saw pop up about the budget deficit, because these stats are quite interesting. The headline is budget deficit swells in November, pushing fiscal 25 shortfall 64% higher than a year ago. It says here the US budget deficit swelled in November, putting fiscal 25 already at a much faster pace than a year ago when the shortfall topped 1.8 trillion, the Treasury Department reported on Wednesday. For the month, the deficit totaled 366.8 billion. 366.8 billion, 17% higher than November 2023, and taking the total for the first 2 months of the year more than 64% higher than the same period a year ago on an unadjusted basis.
Wow.
What?
Yeah, that's...
For the month, total debt, $366.8 billion. What? Like, I know I should be used to this because we look at these numbers all the time, but sometimes I just get these wow moments. Like, holy smokes.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy.
The US burned $366.8 billion.
Yeah, and that's just the deficit. Like, that's not even the total amount spent. That's like net of what, like, the receipts or whatever they call it. Like, net of the inflows.
Yeah, exactly.
It's kind of insane.
You're right, Hamish. The increase came despite receipts that totaled $301.8 billion, about $27 billion more than last November. Outlays totaled $668.5 billion, or nearly $80 billion more from a year ago. The increase in red ink brought the national debt to $36.1 trillion as the month drew to a close. On an adjusted basis, the deficit was $286 billion. And has totaled $544 billion year to date, an increase of 19%. Though the Fed has enacted 2 rate cuts since September, totaling 0.75 of a percentage point, interest expenses continue to be a big contributor to the deficit, and this is the problem we've been speaking so much about. Net interest expenses totaled $79 billion on the month and are now at $160 billion for the fiscal year, outpacing all other outlays except Social Security, Medicare, defense, and healthcare. So it's what? 1, 2, 3, 4. It's the 5th largest expense.
Yeah.
Hectic. That's hectic. The Treasury Department expects to pay $1.2 trillion this year in total interest. What? $1.2 trillion just on interest.
Yeah.
Wowzers.
It does, we've kind of been looking at the US deficit. I mean, some people have been watching the deficit get worse and worse for decades, but, I've been watching it, and we've been watching it for, a couple of years. And it does seem like it's quite bad, but it's also, we're all kind of, I think, just waiting for like the moment where it finally kind of hits like a peak or something, like a snowball, it just seems to get worse and worse and worse. And I don't think anybody really knows, if it'll ever get to a point where the interest, really starts to, snowball the deficit. because obviously every time they take on more debt, the interest payment goes up, so the deficit gets worse, and the deficit is worse, the debt goes up, so the interest payment goes up, so the deficit gets worse. But at what point does that snowball start moving quite quickly? And will that ever be, faced by the US? Because that's obviously a huge problem. It doesn't seem like it's there yet, but as you said, interest being, I think, what is it like? It's somewhere between 10 and 20% of all spending. I think something like that. I think it's about 15% of total spending. Like at what point does it? At what point is it really, really a problem? Like 20%, 25%.
I was listening to Jeff Bezos talk at the Deal Book Summit, and he kind of had an interesting take, which I'll get your opinion on as well. He was actually talking about how Elon Musk is coming in and working with Trump to, deregulate. And he was actually saying that people should view this with more open eyes, because in his opinion, the US is not going to be able to cut their spending too much in the grand scheme of things. So what he's hoping will happen is that at least some of the deregulation will enable a more favorable growth and business environment, so that the US can grow its way out of such a punishing kind of financial situation, which I thought was quite. He was basically saying that the only way is to make the GDP so much bigger that it makes the debt look smaller, essentially. So I don't know. I can kind of see his point. I don't claim to be smart enough to say this is the right way or this is the wrong way, but I thought that was kind of an interesting take.
No, I mean, that's definitely, I definitely agree with that, but I also find it difficult to imagine that, if tax revenue goes up in a meaningful way over the next decade, let's say, that the government isn't going to find a way to spend it. I think that's true. The problem is it's just the nature of the government, I think, to want to spend excessively, especially around elections and that sort of thing. So I don't know.
That's a good point.
It's kind of a tough. There
goes that idea.
Sorry, Jeff. But he's certainly right that it's not to counter the people who are like perma bears, like Ray Dalio. Just because it looks bad doesn't mean that it's gonna end up being an enormous. It's not like it's gonna necessarily end up in hyperinflation, which is what some people are saying. We're already on that path and it's over, and everyone should buy Bitcoin because the US dollar is gonna be devalued, completely. But governments can stay indebted and in a deficit for very long periods of time. So I don't think anybody has all of the stats to know exactly what's going to happen with it. Everyone's just kind of watching and waiting to see.
Yep, true. But there you go. I thought that was a pretty crazy little story. It's they're certainly spending a lot more than they earn.
Yeah,
if the US was a person, I'd be worried.
Yeah, $1 trillion in annual interest. Yeah, it's quite bad.
They got a big credit card bill.
Yeah, quite a considerable credit card bill. Yeah.
All right, mate. Let's bounce out of here. That's all we've got, right? Yeah.
Yes.
We've covered everything.
That's
perfect. All right. Well, Hamish, enjoy your weekend. Are you doing much? You doing anything fun this weekend?
Got a birthday thing on. Just nothing too crazy.
Party.
Just a quiet, normal weekend. Yeah.
Relax, continue your December party times and relaxing. Are you working on videos at the moment?
No, I've got one video that I'll probably make before the end of the year, but besides that, I'm done for
the
content.
Big one.
Yeah, I've got one more video coming, but that'll be right at the end of the year.
People have to wait and see on that.
Yeah, exactly.
It's going to be a big one.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm hyping it up for you.
Yeah.
Make sure you subscribe to Hamish and turn on that notification bell because
we're going to manifest 1 million views on this video. So.
I've heard that he's giving away $1 million.
Yeah.
I can't confirm that.
No. Well,
but
people familiar.
I've heard that.
People familiar with the matter have said that.
Sources familiar with the matter.
Yeah.
Gosh, just to come full circle from last week.
Yeah.
What a great through line.
Yeah. Fantastic.
Comedic timing, Hamish.
Yeah.
I like it.
Brilliant.
All right. We're out.
All right.
See you guys.
GG.
We'll see you next week.
See ya.